we go. Okay, so the pen tool. And there's a lot to it. Let's start with Eclipse.ai. Ellipse, not Eclipse. Ellipse.ai, which you found in the folder that you downloaded for, oops, let me turn off the grids. I'll throw this over here. It should be in the folder. You don't need to turn this in. I'm just going to use it as an example. You don't necessarily have to follow along with me, but it might help. Oh no, I moved all my windows out. Oh, hit right dudes. Go away. You go in here. Alright. And what I've done is I've drawn an ellipse, and there are lots of guides on here. Those blue lines are just simply guides. They won't actually show up in any finished product. They're just there to help us along. If you want to create your own guides, you can simply drag them from the, actually don't do it in this document, but if you're curious how to create them, you can just drag them out from the ruler. And sometimes they're a pain to delete though. Oh, that one deleted. But the main hotkey I want you to learn is Command semicolon. Command semicolon will turn this grid on and off because it gets kind of in the way. So I'm going to go ahead and hit Command or Control if you're on a PC. So Command or Control semicolon. And I'm going to go ahead and grab my pen tool. Let's see. I want to select the object. So actually, I'm sorry, I'll grab my black arrow tool and then select the object and then go to the pen tool. And where are those options? My bar should have changed up here. There should be an option up here to show. Ah, there it is. I'm sorry. Okay, I figured it out. I'm sorry. Grab the white arrow tool, and this path is made up of 4 points. And at the very top, if you kind of mouse over, your mouse will eventually find the first anchor point. And go ahead and select that anchor point. The white arrow tool is what we're going to be using a lot of today, so just kind of remember that hotkey of A. And with that anchor point selected, we can see the handles, or these are called Bezier handles, around it. If for any reason you want to see all of the handles of an object, up here at the top, you can select this option right here, and it should show you all of the handles, I think. Yeah. Let's see. Whereas if you just have one selected, hide handles of multiple selected anchor points, show handles. Whereas if you select multiple anchor points, sometimes it won't show you all the handles. But if you select this guy, it'll just select some of them. Does that make sense? If you select all of them, it won't come up, but if you click and drag the whole thing, it'll still be in this path mode. But if you just do 2 or 3 of them, sometimes you want those to be hidden, because if you're selecting an anchor point and working on it, especially when you start to get really complex illustrations, like those handles will be flying everywhere and you can't tell what's going on. So sometimes you want that on, sometimes you want it off. Here it's kind of easier to have it on because we can see what's going on. So if I click and drag a selection with the white arrow tool and select 3 of those points, I can kind of see what makes this ellipse. And the thing that makes up this ellipse, or just a circle really, is 4 anchor points, 4 particular kind of anchor points. There are 3 kinds of anchor points I want you guys to know. All right, and this is the first one. And let me get what's the technical name of it? It's a smooth point. Yeah, it's a smooth point. So we have 4 smooth points. How do we know that it's a smooth point? The way that we know that it's a smooth point is because if I grab my white arrow tool, and I'm going to click the very top one so that it's the only one selected. If I click and drag these Bezier handles, you can really start to see what they do. They're almost like magnets with the line, right? They sort of drag that line upwards. And the line doesn't, like with the other kinds of points, the line will stop and then go in another direction. But here, it kind of just travels right through it, right? It just sort of smoothly transitions through it. I mean, even if I drag some, I don't know, some weird shape like this, like there's not like a corner or anything like that. It doesn't stop. The line doesn't stop so much. It sort of just smoothly passes through it. I'll press Command Z to undo that a couple times. And notice that when I drag one handle up, the other one goes down. It has like a seesaw effect and vice versa. This is how you tell, at least in Illustrator, that it's a smooth point. Of course, visually, it's fairly obvious. But if for some reason you can't quite tell, because the handles are kind of linked together, they're a smooth point. Let's go ahead and draw our own ellipse. I'm going to just select it and press delete. And then I'm going to press Command semicolon to turn the grid back on. You may want to press Command minus once or twice, depending on your view. And you'll see the grid here. Now the grid gets a little bit confusing, but we're only really worried about how this grid falls on this outer box, okay? This outer box is where we're really concerned, because here's the center point, and we're going to put a point here, and then here's the vertical center point, and we're going to put a point here. So in the center 4 points, it can be it's easy to kind of accidentally get the wrong one. But as I go around, so let's start at the top. And I'm going to zoom back in using Command plus a few times. Just I want to make my screen big so you guys can see it. And it should kind of snap there automatically. And I'm going to click and drag from that center point. If you don't know which one that center point is, again, Command minus, and then see which one it is, and then do it that way. So if I click and drag, notice I've got these handles. What kind of point am I creating? I'm creating a smooth point. Why? How do I know? Because the handles are connected. And I'm going to click and drag them out till they intersect with that point right there. So basically out to the line next door. And there's a new feature inside of CC, and this is actually really brilliant, that it kind of shows you what the line is going to look like before you draw it, at least to some extent. So I'm going to find the horizontal, the vertical center intersect point, which is over here on the right, and you can tell because it's like 1, 2, it's 3 down from the top. And if I click and drag in a downward motion, now here's kind of the first thing I want you guys to remember about the pen tool. When you're drawing and clicking and creating points, you want to drag in the direction that you are drawing, okay? Objects are always you're usually going to be drawing closed objects, so you kind of want to drag in a single direction. If I make the mistake and drag upwards, see what it does? Because it doesn't really matter if you go clockwise or counterclockwise with the circle, but if I go the wrong direction, it's not going to give me what I want. What I want to do is recreate that ellipse, right? So I'm going to click and drag and create that ellipse like that. From here, I'm going to go to the very bottom point and click and drag. And line it up just like before. And then find that vertical center. It should kind of snap, clicking and dragging, and again going in a single direction. And before you close your path, I want you guys to see some things. Before you guys close your path, and you can tell that you're closing your path. Well, I'm kind of, an open path is one that Illustrator will fill in kind of a weird way. It'll kind of cut off the object and sort of fill it in a weird way. But a closed path, you know, it's closed. It's complete. Now your mouse cursor is going to tell you what is going on. In this case, that little circle by my pen tool means that I'm going to close the path. I'm going to complete it. And when you see that circle, and click and drag a final time. That's kind of one of the odd things. Whenever you're closing your paths, you have to click out and drag that final line. Let me turn off the guides here. Let me turn off the guides here real quick so you can see what I'm saying. So when I click and drag that final path, I have to drag out that final line. Does everybody got this? Everybody understand? There's one really, really important, and this is the second big point I want you guys to remember, and that is the 1/3 rule when using the pen tool. A lot of times when you're first using the pen tool, you have a tendency to try and draw out a curve by just using one Bezier handle. Sometimes you can get away with doing this. However, it will be considerably easier on you if, and this doesn't have to be exact or anything, when you drag out one handle, make it about 1/3 of the curve, right? You can see here, this is somewhere in the neighborhood of about 1/3. Then you leave about 1/3 open. And then you finish the curve with 1/3. If you do this, it will really make things a lot easier when using the pen tool. All right, so let's give you guys a few seconds to figure out that. So those are smooth points. Everybody go ahead and with your pen tool, remember there's sort of tools hidden underneath the tools? Go ahead and click the pen tool and then click this little flyout menu, which should create a little pen tool flyout. You won't actually need any of these, but I want you to understand that they exist. You will, well, actually, I take that back. You will need them, but you won't need this palette because, again, Adobe loves its modifier keys, and all of the modifier keys will take you to these things without having to worry about the pen, this little palette. But I want you to understand that they exist. You can add and subtract anchor points. It's pretty easy. I mean, if you want to subtract an anchor point, look at my cursor. Actually, even with the pen tool active, if you just mouse over a point, see how it becomes a little minus sign? See, that's a little minus sign? That means I'm going to delete that point. It looks just like the tool. Pretty simple. It's not always going to be perfectly obvious about how the shape is going to end up. And of course, I can add an anchor point just the same way. If I mouse over anywhere on this line and watch what it does, it's going to create a line. Let's see, I added an anchor point right there. And it kept my line the way it was, right? It will by default create a smooth point. And I can maybe move that back into position by grabbing my direct selection tool, clicking that point, and then dragging it back up into place. While I'm dragging, incidentally, I'm going to hold down the Shift key, and that's going to constrain it to a proportion. I don't know, it was somewhere up here. I guess I could get it just right by turning on those guides. Oh, somehow I need to fix this guy. So with my white arrow tool, I can fix these Bezier handles. So that is the first of 3 points that we're going to talk about. Let's take a quick break. If you recall back in my original lecture, I haven't ever actually had time to do this. I'm going to stop the video.